Hello. So I'm Pete, and that's Antti.
Yeah.
We do have beards. Reece was really quite proud yesterday. He came up with a joke that he talked about us as having beards. That's I found that quite humbling, actually. As one of the three blokes that started this business called Agenda 21, and you hear some of that stuff, you think, wow. So one of the things that we were quite keen to do is, for those of you in the room that are our clients, bring some of this back to, with a bump, to a bit of ground reality and our thoughts of the things that we as a business and you as clients probably need to focus on tomorrow and for the next few months. One of the things that me, Nick and Reece have done since we started this business which is nearly 9 years old, we're probably on about 20th iteration of our business. So some of you who work with us for quite a long time, you may not notice some of the subtle changes that we constantly think about in terms of how we evolve our business, because if we don't do that, we simply wouldn't be in business. So we've creatively called this So What Now, because we couldn't think of anything better. And the first thing is this, and we've unashamedly nicked this from Google, but I quite like the sentiment of, they have a, I have to be careful how to say this, they have a skunkworks team. I don't really know what that means, but I think it means they have a bunch of people whose job it is to just think about things completely different to the day-to-day, business as usual things. And we are guilty as a business, and you are guilty as clients sometimes, of us not doing enough of this. And going back to the pace of change, which everyone talks about in this space, is that I'm challenging myself, I'm challenging you guys who work for us three, I'm challenging you as clients to think about this more often, because it was quite interesting. One of the things I do is I chair the IPA's Digital Media Group, and we very recently finished this year's Media Owner Awards, and Mike was one of the guest client judges on that. I think we found it really quite interesting. One of the things that I get asked to do is summarise the themes from that, and one of the things was, as the market is becoming more positive about more spend coming in, there's a whole new world of bravery and experimentation. But with it comes consequences. There has to be a confidence to do that. So we as a business and the partners we work with and you as clients, is that there's certain things that we need to do. I don't know how many of you at the IAB Engage event last week, there was a few things there that made me really sit up. There's some obvious things. So 2014 was the flip year, that the combined minutage of usage on a tablet and mobile in the UK was more than a desktop. You would sort of expect that. But if you project that for the next 3 years, it's massively going to be more smartphone and tablet rather than desktop. So where we spend your money, where we plan and buy, how we optimise content, how we distribute it, will become increasingly a non-desktop environment. That's never happened before. That will change some of the work that we do. It will change some of the things that the three of us invest in. A couple of other stats which are kind of obvious, but when you hear them you think, well, the growth in video watching on a mobile in the last 3 years in the UK has grown 532%. That's going to change what we do next year for you guys. There was a really, for me anyway, really interesting piece from the founder of ComScore. So ComScore globally looked at the amount of data they had in terms of bought campaigns, particularly, this is in display, across a number of international markets. And two of the main lessons that I picked up from that is that if you optimise to a click rate, it's utterly meaningless if you relate that to business performance. Now, for some of you, that's incredibly uncomfortable. But they said there is no statistical relationship between click rates and business performance across billions of impressions and hundreds of thousands of business effects. So again, the way that we work, where we plan stuff and the way we evaluate stuff will dramatically change. If we don't do that, we're failing as an agency. So whilst it might not be 10 times, it might be 1.5 times. So that's something that we as a business next year, we've got to work better at.
And what does that then kind of means? Well, what it means is, and what we're seeing as a theme, talking with a lot of you, is we've been asked to look a lot into analytics, whether that is setting them up for you, auditing what is there already, or just sort of connecting different data sources, etc., etc. And why is this important? Well, because if we're going to do the step changes, and the changes will happen whether you're in it or not, is we need to give ourselves the best chance of being successful and succeeding. And understanding your performance is a fundamental part of that. Now, understanding your performance closely relates to analytics, and having that information is then something that you can use then to get better and sort of keep up with the change. Another thing that I'm sure most of you will be familiar with is our dear friend Google and their focus on universal analytics, which is the sort of next generation of Google Analytics, and they're actually going to stop the support for Google Analytics next year. So they are, in their way, forcing the market to become more intelligent in the way they sort of track their performance. So that will mean, and the reason why I have the foundations of a house is that is the foundation that you need to lay so that you can give yourself a chance in succeeding, because we don't know what we're going to be doing in 5 years' time, but therefore you need to have that foundation that whatever comes you can understand it and then sort of adapt to it. Another theme which I know you've probably heard multiple times is the power of creative. I'm not talking about good creative. I'm not talking about creative that's good enough. I'm talking about great creative. This piece of study done by the Aegis group and D2D within that group, which is the sort of the research arm of Aegis, looked at the profit and the impact on profit on different aspects and factors of advertising. As you can see, the things that we do, and it might be a little bit sort of funny coming from us as a digital media planning and buying agency, is that if you look at the one on top, which is the creative proposition, it has 5 times more impact than the next best thing, which is the allocation of the budget, and this is the sort of BAU stuff that we do with a lot of you. And that's why, because of that massive importance and massive impact on profits, we're not talking about some brand metrics or consideration, awareness or something like that. We're talking about profit, which is at the end of the day what each and every company strives for, obviously, unless they're non-government, sort of non-profit ones. So that is something that we highlight always. And if you were to spend 100 grand with us and came to us and said, oh, here's a creative that we did for £1,000, we would probably push back and say, well, how about you spend a little bit less on media and a little bit more on creative? Because what we want to do is drive good results, and creative, as you can see from the research, there are many others. It is a big part of it. Another one that I wanted to point out, and if you want your copy or chat more about either this research or the one I'm holding, which is the IPA long short of it, it is research that is very good read. I recommend it for everyone. And one of their key findings was that emotional advertising is the most efficient and effective way of doing advertising. Now, there are lots of changes happening, especially within digital media, and emotional advertising is storytelling, in other words. And storytelling is usually moving picture, and video is something that is a great format in doing that. Whether that's on TV or on your tablet or your mobile, it doesn't really matter. But that is going to be the thing of the future. And yes, we will be talking to you about video in 2015. And you probably get bored of it, but we'll still do it. Another thing, as we've seen, and as sort of Mike presented, is the sort of the overpowering emergence of data. Whether that's your data, market data, competitor data, it's coming. And while having data and while having that foundation that I mentioned and capturing that data is good, the thing that separates the good companies from the bad is understanding that data and turning it into information, and then turning that information into stories is going to be the difference between the ones who succeed and the ones who probably less so. And for us as a business, it is a challenge on how to discover these stories from the data that we then turn into information, and how to bring them to life and make them memorable. And Herra Hakkarainen, which is my favorite bedtime story when I was 5, is probably something you've never heard of. If I was speaking in Finland, everyone in the room would have known about it, because they know the story and they know the background. And it's this understanding of the story within your data that makes you more powerful. And another example is Netflix. I'm pretty sure all of you are aware of that. But maybe a little bit fewer of you are aware that 70% of Netflix content that is being viewed is driven through their recommendation engine. So I would say that Netflix are not in a business of getting a lot of content and having, broadcasting content and producing that content. They are more in a business of understanding what it is that the users want to see and then delivering that to them, because that what users want to see. And yes, they're not watching Schindler's List or any other good movies. They're watching 2-3 star rated movies because that's what people want to see. So it's understanding the stories behind the data that is crucial.
So I guess the last thing then is part of the job of Agenda 21, and that's an apple and there's some dots. It's about joining the dots. There are tech businesses that we work with, and in light of how we spend your money, how we recommend to you as our clients, where we spend that, how we get the most from the partners we work with, how do we liberate their technology, how do we bring this stuff together. There's a thing I actually wrote down because I didn't want to get it wrong, but the idea of us about aligning macro business effects with some of the micro optimization techniques that operate in the market. I think we're guilty, the industry's guilty sometimes of focusing the wrong way round. You start with the smallest stuff and work up, and there's enough events and papers and discussions and topics and blogs and talking about the real micro stuff, and sometimes we forget about the macro stuff. Next year we're going to try and change that in our business. The way that we, as Antti was saying about telling the stories, one of the things that we've desperately been trying to crack this year, and we haven't yet, we will, is how we better bring to life the idea of how your campaigns are working. So whether that's a visualization technique, whether it's how we aggregate the data, it's a massive challenge. Every agency has got the problem with this, but it's a challenge we've set ourselves. We've been investing in it. We're not there yet, but we will, because if we don't, we're going to start to lose some of the opportunities that exist in market. There is something else I wanted to just mention, which I did this morning, because again, like the IPA, there is a thing called the Value of Media event. One of the things that we've been trying to do at the IPA is work out what is the value of agencies, particularly media agencies, in the changing space that we operate in. So collectively, the agencies are doing this thing called Value of Media event. It's at Google because they've got a big space and they've helped fund it, to be honest. It's on November the 13th. What we'll do, actually, Andy, we will send out a link to you here. You can go and register. If you want to go, particularly for clients, it's a client-led event. Register quickly because it's going to be massively oversubscribed, I suspect. But I just wanted to read out some of the highlights from that. So they got the Economist Insight Trust or something to do some research. So this is September. So they surveyed 176 UK business executives. The purpose of the survey was to investigate how businesses are adjusting their strategies to target and sell to connected consumers. My business is in the business of connected consumers, so it's very relevant. It's economically active consumers that use multiple technology devices. When you think about some of the stuff that the guy said earlier about where that might go, it's very relevant. The key findings are, despite the growing number of connected customers, few UK businesses have a strategy to target and sell to them. So Agenda 21's business is about trying to help you, our clients, make better sense of that. It said few UK businesses have a sales strategy for mobile technology. We know that it's not easy. I think there's a movement that the three of us have seen with more clients where how you allocate your investments and costs for next year are different to how you might have done it last year. Whether it's putting a line item for analytics, and as Antti was saying, next year we don't know where you might need to spend that money next summer. but we know you're going to need to spend it. We don't know how important mobile might be for different businesses next summer, but it's going to have greater importance than it does now. So the ability to adapt to that, if you can't get to then and say we haven't got any money, the thinking forward, the future thinking, is there's more of this stuff's going to happen. And there's a bunch of other stuff which is quite interesting. The last one is investing in digital technologies is crucial to companies' strategies to target and sell to connected consumers, and that's both for us, for Agenda 21 as you as clients. So there's quite a lot of obvious stuff there. There's a couple of last things. Elaine mentioned about Uber at the IAB event last week. The opening speaker runs the Webbies in America, which is quite a well thought of sort of global industry set of awards. And he was talking about Uber, and he said in New York the average taxi driver earns $30,000 a year. The taxi driver who uses Uber earns $90,000 a year. And the biggest download days in the UK for Uber was the same day that the black taxi cabbies went on strike. And you think, changing space, changing world, great. There's a key example. So what we're going to do is, of these sort of 5 themes, and we could have had 50. This is not for anyone who works at Agenda 21. If you don't, we'd like you to rank those things on a piece of paper, so you'll get those. So Tom's going to hand them out. Just want you to rank them 1 to 5, because what our plan is to do is to run some events on those topics, but obviously we want to put them in the order that you guys feel might be more useful. So I believe Andy 1's the highest and 5's the lowest. Yeah, so just give them a mark 1 to 5 in the order that you'd be more interested to talk for us to do events about, and we'll sort that out. And then just to finish, talk about things that make you think, ooh, am I keeping up to date with this? So this actually happened at 6:47 on Monday the 6th of October. And that's us.